2 Javits grants, one of which she wrote, SOLNet, which is Speakers of Other Languages Network, that began gifted programs for those whose first language was not English in Dallas, and for Navajo and Ute on the Navajo Reservation. As past chair of the NAGC Diversity and Equity Committee, she co-authored the NAGC Diversity Toolbox, Gifted LGBTQ Students. Alena served on the NAGC GLBT Task Force and Workgroup on Sexually Diverse Populations. Dr. Treat represented gifted education and LGBTQ+ on a U.S. Department of Education Regional Advisory Committee, and she currently teaches online. You have such a broad expanse of experience, and we are so excited to hear from your unique expertise. So her title tonight is Transforming the Invisible to Visible for Gifted LGBTQ+ Students. So if you can all help me welcome Alena here with us tonight. We are so excited to hear from you.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's really important that we cover this topic, mostly because of the Don't Say Gay legislation and all the discrimination against trans folks. So one of the things that I'm doing at the University of Iowa is working with Dr. Lori Croft on, we are presenting a course in which we're writing curriculum for gifted, not just for LGBTQ. We do have units on LGBTQ, units on twice exceptional, units on Black, units on Hispanic, etc., twice, all the way down. And that we're going to have it posted on a open source platform, so anybody in the world can download. So afterwards, if you're interested in contacting me about this course, in which the participants that are taking the course, their product is the curriculum. So just reach out. Okay, we'll get started. Now, one of the things that I want to start with is a poem, and it sort of sets the stage. Adrienne Rich. When those who have the power to name and to socially construct reality choose not to see you or hear you. When someone with the authority of a teacher, say, describes the world and you are not in it. There is a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked in a mirror and saw nothing. It takes some strength of soul, and not just individual strength, but collective understanding to resist this void, this non-being into which you are thrust, and to stand up, demanding to be seen and heard. And here's where I usually go into some of my research, but since this is a shorter presentation, we're skipping over it and just going right into barriers and conditions preventing gifted LGBTQ+ students from thriving. And if you think about it, they can't see themselves in your curriculum. So this is invisible. What I have is each of the barriers start with a different letter of invisible. So we'll be going through each one of those. So identity issues. Gender identity. So that's the sense of gender if they have one, which they identify. That does not, don't confuse it with your external identity. You may appear one way, but your internal identity may be another. Sexual orientation, simple, who you're attracted to. And what's unique about this population is that they're not often recognized unless revealed by the student, or they happen to fit a stereotype. And then you're guessing. So maybe unsure of how their identity will be received, especially if they've had negative experiences with their own family. They might hide due to fear of bullying, being associated with a particular group that is not appreciated or that's negatively viewed. And there are gifted and identity interactions that make this really complex and make it really important to know about. So Hutchinson and Tiso said that gifted identities start self-hate and the gay identity adds to it, or, so it's one of these two, or the gifted part causes inquisitiveness and helps define who they are and whether a label is wanted. So of course, as teachers, our goal would be the latter, but quite often it's the former. So N for no reflection. So there's no LGBTQ plus representation in lessons. At least 67% say there's no exposure, and 17% that there are negative experience representations. So either the negative or just plain no representations contribute to heteronormative discourse, assuming that everyone is heterosexual and assuming everyone that you're studying is heterosexual. So gifted LGBTQ plus students describe classes and the extracurricular activities, football games, basketball games, anything like that, as uncomfortably heteronormative. So this unconsciously reinforces heterosexuality, or at least they want to appear to be that way. And therefore that erases the existence of any alternative identities, such as gay, lesbian, transsexual, bisexual, asexual, pansexual, etc. Now, V is for violence, harassment, and or discrimination. So gifted LGBTQ students have twice the rate of harassment than non-LGBTQ plus youth. And it's not just gifted, it's all LGBTQ plus students. There has been, since 2019, you'd think that things had gotten better, but they haven't. There's been a 43% increase in anti-LGBTQ hate groups in 2019. And I'm sorry, I've got the date wrong on there, but it was 2019. Usually takes place out of the sight of teachers, maybe in the restrooms, off-campus events, going to and from school, in the hallways, anywhere that's out of sight. That's when it usually takes place. So there's stigmas that gifted students face. Stigmas, stereotypes, but it's overwhelmingly less hostile than what LGBTQ plus students experience. There are prejudicial attitudes towards gender identity and expression, and this in turn engenders violence, harassment, and it's often linked to anxiety, focusing on trying to figure out the gender of others and the destabilized gender binary norms, like male and female. So gender in our schools is pretty much policed, and transgressors are punished by experiencing violence. So there's a lot of pressure to conform to rigid gender stereotypes, along with targeted harassment of perceived gender diverse behavior. So like, for instance, a male who may appear to be more feminine, they are really harassed a lot, or a female that may not appear to be feminine. So 86% of these students, the gifted LGBTQ students and non-gifted, experienced harassment or assault. 86%. That's a lot. And that's pretty recent data. 41% of those also chose not to report this to a teacher because they feared being retaliated on. They feared for their own physical safety. And when teachers were surveyed, they said half of them stated they had not done anything to support LGBTQ plus youth at their schools. So teachers felt at least comfortable dealing with victims of harassment and assault. They were much more, at least comfortable, and they were much more comfortable addressing ability, sexism, and race. So LGBT students of color commonly experience both racist and anti-LGBTQ victimization at school, and they were more likely to experience multiple forms of victimization. And trans and gender nonconforming students of color are more likely to experience gender-based victimization, transphobic language, stronger disciplinary actions from school administrators. So we're going on to invisibility. I'm trying to fly through this so we don't spend too much time, and you can ask questions later. So there are these assumptions of heterosexuality and gender can create discomfort and belief that gifted LGBTQ plus students are not accepted, as if they do not exist or do not have the right to exist. This is often driven by fear that they're not actually gifted, that it's a lie. Or they fear whether the truth, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, or both, will be discovered. To fit in socially, they may position themselves in a continuum of visibility at school. The strategies of invisibility, which could be deliberately underachieving, standing out by dressing or acting differently from peers. Now, I'm going back to strategies of invisibility. I had a student that I had not outed myself when I was teaching him, and he was in my gifted class. And he told me later when I saw him, it was like a year later, when I saw him at a gay prom, and my wife and I were supervising it. And he came up to me and said, "Oh, Dr. Treat, if I'd only known, I would have done my work for you." So that may have happened because he couldn't see himself reflected anywhere. And that's part of what got me into moving to Iowa, where I could be out, or moving to an area, or being in a position where I could reveal myself, my true self. So invisibility is magnified for gifted LGBTQ plus students. They must choose to either embrace or hide their sexuality or gender identity, or both. To minimize the harassment or discrimination, they may engage in these self-preservation strategies. They may actively hide their identities, conform to stereotypical gender norms, develop alternative personal and private persona, or suppress these behaviors that are averse to the gender. So if they are like have an internal gender of female, but they're present as male, they'll suppress the female gender expression or behaviors. So they'll struggle with being twice different, gifted and LGBTQ plus, which is linked then to isolation, anxiety, and depression, which makes it worse. So if they have multiple marginalized identities, they face additional challenges, often must choose between academic success and social acceptance. So students who are gifted, LGBTQ plus, and part of another marginalized group may feel torn between balancing those various aspects of their identity, or they may feel the need to internalize one identity in order to externalize the other. Sewell described his internal conflict as a gifted Black queer youth. What he said was, suppressing different points of my identities became critical to my success in school, perhaps especially by influencing my interactions with peers. So sensitivities, we'll go into that. So overexcitabilities are stronger in intellectually gifted than in the average intellectual ability individuals. So the sensitivities of these youth can be intensified more because of bullying, alienation, isolation. There's a refrain of loneliness. It's often reflected in the gay community. That's hiding one's true self from the heterosexually dominated world. But it's necessary. It's protection from discrimination or harassment. To have heightened sensitivities, and these aren't necessarily understood by many, may be another reason to not want to reveal their true ultra-sensitive and therefore ultra-vulnerable selves. So these heightened sensitivities can plunge them to the depths of despair and can often cause them to subject themselves to their own internal domestic violence. That's beating themselves up over little things. Internal turmoil can foster self-harm or suicidal ideation. So thinking about suicide, especially by transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, though, can be predicted by if they were a victim of a sexual victim, of sexual harassment, bias-based peer, and problematic drug use. So there are inclusive language issues too. This is something that not a lot of people think about, but I think more and more are, maybe through these kinds of presentations, I hope. So there's a lack of inclusive language by school, the gifted teacher, and in curricula. And that may not make gifted LGBTQ plus students or LGBTQ plus parents or guardians feel welcomed. So this lack of inclusive language contributes to dominant heteronormativity and cisnormativity within schools. Okay, now, what I mean is that they might have mother and father on forms. They may not say parent/guardian, parent/guardian. There may be, there's other kinds of language that we can go into that later. So school communications commonly use the heterosexual family configuration terminology, what I just explained. It can alienate these students and their family members and those who may be heterosexual and not have a different gender identity, but they have a family member that is. So teachers and school staff can cause negative experiences for trans and gender nonconforming students by repeatedly misgendering them or not using their firm names or not using their firm pronouns. So there's also a behavior and interest difference. So we're in B. Many gifted children are androgynous in both characteristics and interests. So they may not adhere to traditional binary male and female roles. And I think we as teachers realize that there are more and more students in our schools that are embracing the non-gender binary aspect as well. It's becoming more and more common. They may reject using binary pronouns such as he, him, his, her, and hers. They may prefer their and theirs. And even me, sometimes I have trouble calling a single person there. But it's something that we need to get used to and at least make an attempt to. Those students will understand if you struggle with it at first. So parents and communities may implant heterosexual gender identity, and that's further reinforced in school. The cost, stifling of creativity and achievement. Society lags behind in support of non-traditional domains and roles, especially for boys, like the effeminate male. So lack of role models. They may experience psychological distress, trauma, depression caused by isolation, fear, or unhealthy perfectionism. And this perfectionism can be rooted in a deep fear of not being accepted as who they are. So isolationism and feeling out of place can be a result of a lack of positive LGBTQ+ role models in the gifted and general education curriculum. So this may have an unintended consequence of fostering, nurturing depression due to the lack of seeing anyone in their curriculum that are like them, and the implied heterosexual assumptions, like everybody that we study is heterosexual. So students may not have access to gifted LGBTQ+ mentors or teachers. So LGBTQ+ teachers may not be out due to fear of being fired. In some states, you can be. So there are no employment protections in 27 states. And as of this writing, no state protected gender identity. So LGBTQ+ teachers fear being discriminated against if parents decide to protect their children from their influence. So unless you live in an accepting area, even if they're open with their gender or sexual diversity, teachers rarely, if ever, share this with students. And I was one of those for the longest. So empowerment. So self-advocacy is the process of recognizing and meeting the needs specific to your own learning ability without compromising the dignity of yourself and others. So self-advocacy, it's a complex, challenging process. It's critical to nurture a growth mindset, which in turn empowers student success. So efforts to empower these students and encourage them to self-advocate could become difficult to implement, may come across as insincere. So that's a danger as well. And especially for neurologically different gifted LGBTQ+ students, the lack of empowerment can be even more serious. Gavin Grimm, who won a federal case on bathroom access, stated in an interview, being neurologically different is almost synonymous with giftedness. So much more is expected of us. We've proven that we're smarter, so that bar is set for us. But for many of us that suffer or live with mental illness or neurological differences, as we age, support tends to go away. So our experiences as gifted kids fall behind. We get less support when we need more support. When grades fall, it gets worse. As you start performing less, you get behind and that bar gets further away. It becomes a cycle of lack of support. Now, there is a bright side. There are solutions and advice. And there's set up with the first letter of visible. So violence, to help mitigate this, ensure that the violations to the safety of these students are followed up with appropriate consequences. Publicly praise those who foster an inclusive environment. Post a safe space, placard, sticker, rainbow flag, equality symbol, something that's showing you're open and accepting in a prominent location, and provide affirming information and resources for LGBTQ+ students. So review non-discrimination policies with students that include LGBTQ+ issues, and display the school's anti-bullying coordinator's contact information in the classroom. So this is one way to help them self-advocate. To dispel heterosexual assumptions, teachers can create a regular routine around pronouns by stating their own and asking students to share it if they would like to. No pressure. This provides space for greater discussion of cis and heteronormativity, which significantly impacts students' perceptions of safety. You can also facilitate LGBTQ+ issues as a natural part of conversations. You can provide staff development for teachers, counselors, and psychologists on characteristics and needs of gifted LGBTQ+ and gifted LGBTQ+ students. Arrange educational opportunities and placements that accommodate cognitive, gender, and sexual diversity. Include a focus, okay, for sensitivities, next one. Include a focus on overexcitabilities when planning gifted curriculum. So that'll help the students understand each other. And keep in mind that these students are more likely to have heightened overexcitabilities and sensitivities. So partner with counselors and experts who are familiar with overexcitabilities, if that's possible. Set up the gifted classroom with comfortable seating, with sensory cushions and other adaptations to meet the needs of students with central overexcitabilities. Now, in the inclusive language and curriculum, small changes can make a big difference. Considering including a same-sex couple as part of foreign language practice, using gender neutral pronouns within a math problem, displaying posters that depict LGBTQ+ individuals and gender variance or nonconformity, include the identity and history of eminent historical figures such as Alan Turing, the computer scientist that broke the code for the Germans in the war, and astronaut Sally Ride. So everybody assumes that they're heterosexual, but they weren't. So two examples of how teachers can include LGBTQ+ content in their curricula are included at the end of this presentation, by the way. So utilize parent and guardian terminology when sending invitations instead of mother, father, and use gender neutral terms as much as possible when communicating with students. And allow these students, LGBTQ+ students, to undertake projects that are relevant and meaningful to them. This may encourage students to become more active and focused in academic pursuits. That means if they want to do something, if a boy wants to do something involving something considered more feminine, encourage it. Because just like you would encourage any child's passion. So behaviors and interests. So allow gender variance. Ensure that non-traditional gender roles are included and honored in the gifted curricula and in general discussions. Allow time for questioning, which will also allow for the formation of identity during children's development by supporting those students who choose non-traditional roles. Provide mentors, internships, guest speakers, independent study mentors, role models based on their interests that counter, those people should counter gender stereotypes and provide positive relationships. So not all of them have to be, but some of them, just so they can see somebody like them. So lack of role models. Revealing reflections. So ensure that job shadowing, internships, mentors, guest speakers, posters include some gifted LGBTQ+ individuals. Not all of them, just some. And allow students to research the gender identity and/or sexual orientation of famous gifted individuals and make presentations and/or curricular materials that can be used in future classes. Connect them with gifted LGBTQ+ advocates. Organizations that can help you find these are the ACLU, GLSEN, GSA Network, G2 Youth Advocates, Safe Schools Coalition, Transforming Families, and there are some others. So empowerment and support. So organize the school participation in a day of silence is a suggestion. And this is a national student-led demonstration where LGBTQ+ students and allies take a vow of silence for a whole day. to protest the harmful effects of harassment and discrimination of LGBTQ plus student, excuse me, people in schools. So there's another strategy, which is establish and support extracurricular student-centered groups for LGBTQ plus students and allies, such as the GSA. And these groups can provide gifted LGBTQ plus youth with safe spaces to explore gender identity and expression, discuss issues, develop friendships with other students, gain a sense of community, and engage with activism. I will tell you that when I was a GSA sponsor, I surveyed all of the kids that were in the group, and over 85% of the students in the GSA had been in gifted programs at one time or another. So we may have a lot more gifted individuals in the LGBTQ plus population than most people think. So here's some voices of students. So the question was, what factors would have led you to intervene or not intervene when you heard homophobic remarks? This one participant said, the people who said it, the social structure of my school was very hierarchical. Certain people couldn't speak to others. I was also not out or vocal about my sexuality, mainly due to the fact that I was not confident in the support I would receive from my school or the general culture of school. Another participant said, I did not feel empowered in school to speak up for LGBTQ plus students. So that's why it's important that we help them feel comfortable. This was partly my own fault, but the secondary school environment I was in and the teachers working there were not very conducive to an inclusive, open atmosphere. So here's another one by a queer or gay woman. How supportive do you think staff and CTI? I'm going to scroll down to, I switched courses, and the first course comments about two genders were made. I then moved to film studies, where the teacher let us zone in on LGBTQ plus film if we wanted to. And I not only read and marked an essay on queer as folk, but that person asked, I asked permission and then showed it to the RAs, the RAs, and so that I could talk about queer film with all of them. And then after the program they kept sending me queer and feminist film theory. It was wonderful, according to the rest of the interview. And another one, how supportive do you think staff at your school were of LGBTQ plus students? This one wrote, I wrote a man's essay about two boys when I was 15, and my English teacher really liked it. So he asked me to read it out. That was probably the most solidarity I got, aside from the compulsory boys and girls can like boys or girls in sex ed. That felt forced, but the English teacher felt genuine, because nobody had to read them out. So suggestions from these students were, how can gifted teachers support gifted LGBTQ plus students? Jay said, and he was a gay male, bring parents and specialists from many fields, origins, skin colors, gender identities, and sexual orientation. And even though these are older, they were in gifted programs when they were young. So Kyle was a gay Hispanic male. He said, imagine meeting a transgender surgeon or engineer speaking about the things that matter to them and seeing how they thrive doing that. Emily said, and she lesbian, said, I feel like being more open about LGBTQ plus stuff, even as early as middle school. And she was one of my students. Being more directly inclusive with identities in problem stories anywhere. That would have made me feel more accepted, and that my teacher is an open-minded person, and I might be able to talk about it with that teacher or even openly in the class. Otherwise, it's this thing that it's not okay to talk about. We should talk about this in the AG program so we know that it's okay to be like that. It's really important. So Vesey said, the casual mention of LGBTQ plus identity in discussions. You don't have to make a point, just casually mention it. Not even Joan of Arc was X identity. But if a woman she loved was a big part of her life, just bluntly include that woman as a matter of fact. Relate curricula to students' experiences and give them a chance to propose solutions to real life issues. In curricula that's already made, figure out how students relate or do not to the material and explain how this could be practical to them. When using examples, don't always use white heteronormative examples. Learn the student's language. And Kat said, and she was the twin to another student that we just quoted. She said, I guess a program that talks about the LGBTQ plus community and issues so that everyone can learn about it and be accepted. Make sure they feel welcome there. Silence implies something is wrong. So Kat was straight or heterosexual and her twin was not. Twin was a lesbian. So there are some resources that I have, and I'm going to let you get to this. There's a case study by about Kevin Grimm. There are curriculum and lessons, activities. There's a PowerPoint, there's videos, and you can click on them all and they're free to you. There's inclusive role plays that I made up and based them on the Take a Stand. So I kept the Take a Stand and just had specific for LGBTQ plus situations. So I've got all of the sets. Some of them are about students that are maybe overweight, who may be bringing in food from a different culture, and there's reactions. There's all sorts of scenarios. And there's a teacher's guide as well. So you'll have a perpetrator, you'll have a victim, and you'll have bystanders. And it's up to them to act it out. So here's the unit. There's an example of part of the unit that's in there. And there's a link to resources. And to contact me, you can reach me at my name, Alena Treat at Gmail. So there's references, and there's a little plug, a shameless plug. So now available is the Rainbow Revolution, Empowering Gifted LGBTQ plus Learners for Transformative Action. It's in the Palgrave Handbook of Transformational Giftedness for Education. Robert Sternberg, Don Ambrose, and Sarah Karimi are the editors. And it's both available in print and digital form, and you can even purchase and download single chapters. There are also other chapters. If you want to write to me, then I can tell you where the chapters are published. Okay.
Thank you, Alena, for sharing with us.
Okay, are there any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but I did just post questions, ? So we'll see if any come in for a few minutes.
Okay, now what do I do with this?
You can either leave it in presentation mode or you can stop sharing your screen, and then either way, okay. You can leave it up.
Okay, here we go.
There we are. There you and I are. Thank you for sharing this information with us tonight. I had a question for you, and we'll see if anyone else has any as I kind of monitor Facebook here. You said one of the most important pieces for students who identify this way is self-advocacy. And I know, being a teacher myself, even just in the gifted community, and there's so many layers to identity, but self-advocacy, I feel like, is one of the things students struggle with the most. Do you have any thoughts or ideas? Because I feel like you said, depending on where you are, schools are open to this or not, depending on the age of the students, the culture of the state or the district. There's so many complexities to this, right? But we can go for the student regardless of where they are to teach them this self-advocacy. But Sometimes it can be so hard, just even, teaching a student to self-advocate for an assignment they needed a little more time on, let alone something that's really meaningful to their identity. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, actually, I did a chapter in Deb Douglas's book. So it was on self-advocacy for gifted LGBTQ plus students.
Yes.
So one of the things, though, I want to give an example. Gavin Grimm. He was in a state that was definitely not inclusive, not accepting. And he was harassed by both administration, board, school board, students. Students would tell their own Gavin stories. They would make them up about what happened to them when they were in the bathroom, when he went into the male bathroom. And he was forbidden by the school board he had to go to the restroom to which his original gender was assigned at birth, which was totally demeaning to him. But he was able to reach a compromise and got a restroom that was next to the nurse's station. But him being neurologically challenged, in addition to being gifted, and part of it was he was also ADHD. It was not good for him to have to leave the classroom and be gone for very long. And this restroom was on the other side of the school, and sometimes it was locked. It was definitely the only place he could go in after school activities. So that was locked. The whole building was locked during his after school activities. So he had to have his mom come pick him up and take him to the restroom, or somebody had to take him to a gas station. But what he did for self-advocacy is he had his mom advocated for him. His mom called the ACLU, and the ACLU sent people to help him, and they filed a court case. So that very act made him really empowered. He realized that through conversations that the only way he could survive at all was to advocate for himself, which he felt bolstered by individuals who believed in him and supported him. So linking students up with people who are like them, and maybe even organizations that can do something to help right the wrongs, is critical. But I think the basic foundation too of just allowing them to, if there are examples in the curriculum somehow, just casually mentioning that this author is gay or had a husband or something like that, without making a big deal out of it. Sally Ride, you could even say her partner was just extremely happy when she got selected for the space program. There are other things that you can do without pointing it out and without the teacher getting in trouble, for saying gay.
Well, and I'm thinking, we kind of work in a system that thinks, it came out of the industrial period, and, we're a group, and this is what everyone needs. And we very much need to think about individuals, gifted, the color of their skin, what country they come from, what language they speak, what orientation they have. We're all individuals. And as teachers, we work so hard sometimes to find examples for the gifted child who also has ADHD, or the gifted child who has autism. We need to be finding these examples for the gifted child who has a different sexuality or gender or different things like you said, but I'm not sure that that's a common practice yet, but we do it so easily for these other pieces of a student's identity that they need to see themselves in, this is another layer that we need to make sure that we're showing students who they are in someone else.
Right. And there's a resource, if somebody writes to me, I can share. I just need to find this, let's see, and I'll share my screen.
Sure, that'd be wonderful.
This is something that I developed for that course that I was telling you about. I invented the course, and Lori Croft is letting me teach it. Let me share my screen. So there we go. This is a resource that I developed that has, well, this is an autonomous learner model enrichment triad. We focus on a particular model each time. So if you go to LGBTQ+, there are all sorts of books that are in, that would be great resources about bullying. There's even a list of, let me see if I go down to my name. Famous LGBTQ+. This is one that I did a long time ago. And what it is a spreadsheet that, let's see if I can just open it up. No, it's not open. Let's see, open link in new tab. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, there we go. So it shows all of these people that we are familiar with. Jane Addams, Susan B. Anthony. So this is a tool for teachers to be able to say, hey, to maybe do a little more background information on them, but it's sort of, if students automatically assume that if you don't say what their orientation is, that they're heterosexual, because that's how our school system is. But look how many there are. Willa Cather, Madonna, Michelangelo, Charles Lawton, the actor, Herman Melville. There are lots and lots and lots of Andy Warhol, a lot of different people that we study, but we didn't know about their identities. They were automatically assumed. Okay.
So if someone wants that list, they could email you.
Yes.
And you'd share it with them, or yeah, maybe that's the best way. We could maybe link it.
Or I could, yeah, I could put it in the, yeah, I'll go ahead and link it in there.
Okay.
I can link the whole spreadsheet, I guess. And that way you'll have.
Yeah, if you want to email it to me, and we'll figure out if we can get it on our website next to your video when we're done here. We can see if somebody who's more technology savvy than me.
I'll just do this one, share. Let's see, share.
And before we go tonight, could you tell us more about this course in case people are interested in joining you on that?
Okay. Yeah, this course is by the is through the University of Iowa, and it's creating empowerment curriculum. So anybody who's going through the course, it's a 1-credit course, lasts a couple weeks. And they, instead of creating a paper that goes nowhere, we create a minimum of 3 lessons that are posted on an open source platform for anybody in the world to download. So whoever writes it, after it's vetted, of course, it may be edited before it's put out there. And what we're doing is with each of the populations that is being focused on, has an expert that will be viewing it and trying to factor out any implicit bias that some may have intentionally put in there. That is, we are focused, there are units on Black, units on Hispanic, units on twice exceptional, English learners, immigrants, LGBTQ+.
Wow.
So, Yeah.
So how do they find out information? They go to the University of Iowa website? Is that how they find that?
Well, I don't know if you can find it there, but you can write
Okay.
to Lori Croft, or you can write to me.
Okay.
And
so
I'll put them in.
Email.
My email is
Your
Alena.
name?
Yes, my name.
Treat.
Alena Treat at gmail.com. You can put it in this chat for me if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll stick it here.
Yeah.
I'll put it out here.
And what the empowerment curriculum is that you have you focus on at least 2 adults that are in that population that you've chosen. Okay. And then you focus on at least 1 or 2 youth who are in that population who have made a difference in their society. Awesome. So that's why it's called empowerment curriculum, because if the kids view there's an adult like them, they think, well, maybe someday I can be like that. But if they view a youth who has made a difference, they might start thinking, oh, maybe I can make a difference now.
I love how inclusive that is. It's all kinds of diversity that you're creating a mirror for.
So people can choose, that are in the course, can choose to either do the empowerment curriculum, which focuses on 1 population, or they can do a diversity unit, which focuses on many of them. So it's a whole they can do a whole diversity unit. So they might have somebody that's Black, somebody that's Hispanic, somebody that's twice exceptional, etc.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I put your email in the chat on Facebook, just to remind everyone if they want to get a hold of you. And this will all be available on our website and YouTube after tonight. But thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, and I'll add the resource for that.
We'll figure out how to do students.
That. Yeah, I'll
then
just
we
put
don't
it
all
in my
have
presentation.
to Google on our own and try to figure it out. You've done the work for us. So.
Okay, I'll add it to the resources page.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I just want to remind those of you who are still with us, we don't have another conversation with CAGT in October because we have our conference coming up. So we're taking that week off because we will have just gotten done with conference and we'll all be exhausted from all of our learning. But we do have on November 1st, Helen Dudney, who's going to be talking to us about early childhood and the importance of play. So that's kind of a fun topic. So hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye, guys.